Welcome to Fully Booked, the bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello, readers, and welcome to episode 35 of Fully Booked. I'm your host, Natalie, and today's episode is going to be none other than my April reading wrap-up. So I'm going to preface this episode by saying that overall, my reading journey and reading overall went a lot better this past month than in the month of March, or at least that is how I felt, which is kind of odd because I still felt a little busy this past month, but I feel like I definitely took a little more conscious time and effort to slow down here and there, some days during the week, some days on the weekends, to just sit down and read some of my books and again, just make a little bit more time. But I will say for the times that I was busy this past month, I think audiobooks honestly really came in clutch for helping me progress through books a little bit faster. I think especially because I'm on the go so much on some days. Actually, an FYI, I do tend to drive a lot when I'm commuting anywhere because I do have access to a car, but also besides when I travel downtown, a lot of the other places I go on a weekly basis are honestly maybe like a 10 to 15 minute drive, maybe even like 20-ish minutes or something at most. I tend to not go too far, I guess, on my errands and again, things I go to on a weekly basis. So driving is just a lot easier, especially when you have access to a car. And because I'm in the car so much, listening to audiobooks also comes in handy, and you can knock out quite a bit of a book when you're driving. You know, like I said, maybe up to like 20 minutes even, and if you listen on like almost 2 times speed. It was also helpful because I was going on a lot of walks and runs this past month, and that was also another time where, especially with my longer runs, I was knocking out a lot of audiobook time. And I do understand that some people don't really like to read on audio, and they like the experience of really sitting down, focused, and being immersed in a book, which I have to say I did miss that aspect a little bit when I was only reading books on audio. But I think what I would say to those people who, I don't know, aren't quite into audiobooks, but they do want to try them, is that I feel like hybrid reading is probably the better option, where you still get to read the book, I guess, either on your e-reader or if you have a physical copy, but then you can switch back and forth. So again, if you're going outside, if you're going for a walk, if you're commuting somewhere to run an errand or meet a friend or whatever it is, then you can easily pick up the audiobook. Again, if you can't necessarily or don't necessarily want to bring your other copy of your book out with you. I feel like audiobooks are just the best hack overall if you do want to get some more reading. And of course, here on the podcast, audiobooks do count as reading. I will say that. But without further ado, let's actually go over my monthly highlights before we get into each of my reviews. So, in total, I completed 9 books this past month. I read 5 out of 6 of my monthly hopefuls for April. 2 of the books that I read were from my spring TBR, which again, if you guys actually are newer here, I put 6 books as well, typically on my seasonal TBRs. So not bad. And this one's got to be the best so far. I only had 1 DNF for the month of April. And I'm going to be honest, I think I'm mentally clapping in my head right now the number because I was pretty proud. I think last month, back in March, was actually the worst month for DNFs. And then, every other month I've had at least 2 DNFs. So I'm pretty proud. Of course, I would like that number to be 0 ideally, which means that I am more enjoying and actually completing every single book that I pick up. But again, I will say, I think for some reason I was just in a better rhythm and routine with my reading and the books that I was picking up. And I don't know why some months I seem to be having a lot of misses in terms of the books that I pick up on a whim. because I feel like the reason I don't put too many books on my monthly hopeful slash TBR like some other people do is because I want to leave a little bit of room for mood reading, so to pick up whatever books I feel like at the moment. So yeah, I feel like that leaves me maybe 2 books that I can pick up on a monthly basis that are just more for mood reading, maybe that I just find on accident or something. And it's weird because in the past I've had a couple odd times where I picked up some gems, some like newer or like, yeah, just surprise authors, and they've ended up being really good. But honestly, I feel like the last couple months, maybe even to like year, every single book that I pick up on a whim has been a complete miss. And I don't know if it's because I'm picking up authors that I feel like I already know are not really for me, or what exactly it is that I keep getting a lot of misses. Or I don't know, maybe I'm just getting into more of a rhythm of TBR reading versus mood reading. I don't know what exactly the case may be, but whatever it was, we didn't have as much of that this past month. And I guess with all that being said, for the highlights, let's actually start getting into each of the 9 books that I read. But before we continue, I just wanted to give a quick thank you to today's partner, which is Chimney Tea, as well as take a moment to talk about their latest launch, which is their Golden Meadow High Mountain Milk Oolong tea. Now, the reason this is called milk oolong is for its very subtle, creamy aroma and notes that the tea possesses. In addition, it's got a nice floral and sweet flavor profile as well. And I'm going to be honest, this is the tea that I have been drinking for the past month now. It's great for getting my day started, having that hot cup of tea in the morning, as well as for the past couple weeks, I've been making a cold brew overnight with this Golden Meadow tea, and it tastes delicious as a nice cold drink in the afternoon. And as you guys know, with the weather slowly starting to get warmer, you don't always want a hot cup of tea as the day goes on. And of course, I love the tin that these teas come in, as well as the refillable packaging option that they do offer, which is great for sustainability, as well as it's slightly lighter on the wallet. So if you want to learn more and place your order for their Golden Meadow High Mountain tea, you can click the link in my show notes and use my code to get 10% off of your order. Once again, thank you as always to Chimney Tea for keeping me lightly fueled. All right, everyone. So for the first book that we're going to talk about in this April wrap-up, we have Say You'll Remember Me, standing in a nice dress, staring at the sunset, babe. And also JK, but I am really surprised that there was absolutely no reference to that song in this book whatsoever. But anyways, yes, this first book is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, which is her latest release of this year. And I guess for those of you who still might not know what this book is about, basically we meet our FMC Samantha and our MMC Xavier, and they basically meet kind of by chance because she brings in this cat from the street to him because he's a vet. Yeah, and so she gets this cat looked at, and for some reason they have this hate thing going on for a hot second, and then it quickly flips, and literally they're like, oh, I actually like you, do you want to go on a date with me? Or I think he asks her, and she says sure, but unfortunately what she neglects to tell Xavier is that she's about to leave and move to California for good to go help take care of her mother, who has I believe early dementia. I think her mom was supposed to be on the younger side in this book. I don't quite remember now. But anyways, but yeah, this makes things challenging because they go on this first date and it's the best date that they've ever had in their entire life. And they already know that they're so into each other. They really like each other, but she's literally about to leave. And so there's no point of them getting into a relationship. But of course, they keep talking and interacting, and then they try to beat the odds and progress to have this long distance relationship, while at the same time she is in California trying to take care of her mother, as well as just dealing and being with the rest of her family there. Um, this one's gonna be interesting. I have a lot to say about it. Oh, and I don't know why I forgot to say the rating for this, but I guess this is gonna say a lot. I ended up rating this one 3.75 stars. Also, I'm so sorry, guys. I just realized I forgot to give it a spice rating. But if I were to come up with one now, I would say maybe like 1 to 2 chili peppers, maybe 1.75. Because the one upside of this book was that, to me, I would say it was basically closed door. Like, we did have 2 scenes. We did have, like, some banter, going on. But this was one where we really weren't in the room and getting down with them, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, that was a good thing. But otherwise, I'm trying to think. Let's start with the pros. Something I did really like about this book was the whole memory aspect, and being an underlying theme for the book, which was obvious because her mom has dementia in this story, and we see the progression of her mom's dementia and like worsening and just all the things that they have to deal with. But yeah, I think the way she tied in memory also to the romance probably saved this book and made it so much better. And I think just the way that memory was described and like basically how fleeting the present actually really is, like you can never go back to it, and you only really have the memory as like highlights and how you felt in that moment and like maybe the people you were with. And something that, yeah, that was just repeated throughout the book. I really liked that quite a bit. There were so many good quotes in this book. Yes, going back to the book, yeah, this theme overall in the book was really good, and again, saved it. And then for the rest of the book, there was just a lot of things off and cringe about this book. I feel like it's almost one that I think I wrote this in my review. It should have almost just leaned more towards the litfic side instead of trying to have like this rom-com tone still. Like I did enjoy some of the scenes of like when they were physically together and their banter, and like they did have a good connection, or at least I could see it at times. But I just felt like for a book that was dealing with, yeah, this heavy topic of dementia, as well as like them starting a new relationship but being long distance, like was not like the two MCs just did not handle it at all in the best way. And I feel like, again, when there's these litfic elements written in, like it should be written about more realistically versus like, I don't know, more super fluffy rom-coms where you can kind of suspend more disbelief and like the heists are heisting and like whatnot. Yeah, I just feel like they just did not handle things well in this book, and they kind of had like, I don't know, toxic codependency, especially in like the latter half of the book, and some of the things they were doing and not thinking through and just, I don't know, acting on a feeling. It just didn't really make sense to me. Anyways, I don't want to go on and on about what I didn't like about this book, but the one note that I'm also going to make is that there was a certain fictional character that was repeatedly referenced in the first half of this book, I want to say, and specifically that our MMC is compared to physically. And personally, I was not quite here for that reference. And if you've read the book, you probably know what I mean. And honestly, I'm pretty sure every person I talked to that read this book did not really like this repeated reference. So something else to be mindful of. But yeah, I guess overall, this book was just a little bit of a letdown compared to Just for the Summer. And honestly, thinking back, I would probably bump my rating up for Just for the Summer to 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed that one last year. I think that was my favorite Abby Jimenez book so far, and yeah, this one just did not quite cut it. I would still recommend it. Like, you could pick it up and give it a shot if you really like Abby Jimenez, but let's just say it's not the first book that I would recommend by her. All right, everyone. So the second book that I'm going to talk about that I read in April is maybe one that some of you have been waiting for me to continue this series, and that is Daisy Haites by Jessa Hastings. And my rating will probably tell you already how I felt about this book. And so I rated this book 4 stars, and I ended up rating it 2.5 chili peppers. I feel like I'm a little confused on whether I want to say this series is closed door or not still. Having read the second book now, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. if you guys know what I mean, for those of you who have read. Anyways, I guess for those of you who haven't read this series still, the Daisy Haites book is the second book in the series, and we kind of pick up from Magnolia, or in the sense that we follow along, I guess, Magnolia's timeline, but from Daisy's point of view, as well as Christian and her brother Julian's, and we get to see their side of the story and what is going on in their universe. I guess this is all technically the same universe, but it feels very different because we're in this more crime and gang lord setting. Because if you don't know, Julian Haites is supposed to be one of the biggest gang lords in London in, I guess this universe. And yeah, Daisy is his younger sister, who mainly gets shielded from most of the action and quote business that he does. But yeah, that's kind of the world that she is living in. That's mostly what I'm going to say in terms of what this book is about. There's a lot that went on in this book, to be honest, a lot more compared to the Magnolia universe. I feel like that's just kind of the vibe that you're going to get when you're in more of a gang lord setting. Which was great because I found this book a lot more interesting. There was a lot more going on plot wise as well as character development wise, and it was also interesting to see Christian in more of the gang lord setting, which, you know, his family is also involved in, as we learned from the first book, compared to the London socialite setting that we were mainly in again in the first book. I'm not going to say too much in this review because I'm going to do a full deep dive spoiler review later at some point. But yeah, overall, you guys can tell I like this book a lot better. There were still good found family elements. Obviously, it was written about in a bit of a different way in this book, but I still liked it quite a bit. I think the romance and just the overall relationships that Daisy had with Christian and her brother were also very interesting, and Daisy in general was just a lot more of an interesting FMC to read about. So it's safe to say that this book was the one that indeed convinced me to continue to read the series, and I'm kind of sad that I have to read the next Magnolia book, which is The Long Way Home, because I really just want to read the next Daisy book, which is The Great Undoing. But one note I did want to make is that I guess for those of you who do want to pick up this series, and maybe you're wondering if like you can just read the Magnolia books or the Daisy books, I strongly recommend that you read the entire series in order. So going back and forth between the Magnolia and the Daisy books in the correct order, because the timelines and the characters are very intertwined and interconnected between each of these books. And if you care about, I don't know, the plot arc and certain details, you're going to miss a lot if you only read the Magnolia books, or vice versa if you only read the Daisy books. So I've seen a lot of people realize not realize rather, that like Magnolia and Daisy are like an entire series together and they just read one or the other. But yes, you do really have to read both to get the whole sense and picture of this universe. Now, in a surprise plot twist, I ended up un-DNFing The Let Them Fury by Mel Robbins. But unfortunately, I ended up rating this book 2.75 stars, which is not very high for a nonfiction book, and I feel like I'm not sure if it was totally worth it getting through this whole book. I was convinced by some people reading it on BookTube, and I just wanted another audiobook to listen to, but honestly, I don't have too many different thoughts to say from when I initially DNF'd this book back in February. I will note that there were a few good chapters at the end of this book that I enjoyed on like struggles and challenges that you will face in relationships, and how to face and deal with those and apply this Let Them Fury. I think I enjoyed some of those later chapters the most, but otherwise I feel like at least 90% of this book could have been cut and just been made into a podcast episode, which if you guys don't know, she literally has a podcast episode titled The Let Them Fury, which I think was done back in May 2023. If you want to go and look it up, and you could honestly just watch that and get the same thing out of it as you would reading this entire book. Basically I just found pretty much every chapter was repetitive, kind of just repeating the same thing over and over. And I will say, I think if you're, I don't know, very stuck in like a certain, I don't know, mindset or like life circumstance or stage, maybe this book might speak to you more and be able to like help you more like get out of your head, so to speak. But I think for those of us who are in like different stages of life and are maybe a little more self-motivated and disciplined, I feel like there's just nothing groundbreaking about this let them theory. And yeah, some of the points she's making is stuff that a lot of us probably already know, some of us probably already do in our everyday lives. Yeah, I just feel like overall this book is for a very certain type of person, but for the rest of us, again, just go listen to the podcast episode or any one of her other podcast episodes. She always, I feel like, covers this let them theory in some aspect in every single one of her episodes. And I guess one other note to add, or actually two other notes. If you're going to read this book, definitely do it on audio. It's very casual, conversational, like she talks directly to the reader. And I feel like this book would actually be more boring if you were just to read it. And then the second note I'm going to make is that I think from the lens and framework as a Christian, this book, this let them theory just doesn't work for me. So I will say that. But I guess again, as the theory says, you can always let them. So with that, I guess I'm gonna let this book be. All right, everyone. So the next book that I'm going to talk about in today's wrap-up is one that's started to become a reoccurring series in and of itself on this podcast, and that is Laurie Gilmore's latest Dream Harbor book, The Strawberry Patch Pancake House. That's quite a mouthful of a title, I gotta admit. And yeah, before we dive into this book, I ended up rating this one 2.75 stars, and I gave it 3 chili peppers, because all of her books are quite open door, if I haven't said that before about this series. But anyways, this book, we basically follow the female main character, Iris, who we're introduced to in the Christmas Tree Farm. I think she was Kira's, assistant. And then we're also introduced to Archer, who is a single dad who moves to the small town to be with his young daughter, Olive. And to raise and take care of her. And Iris basically ends up becoming his nanny to help him take care of his daughter. And, as always, romance ensues from there. I don't think I need to say too much more about this book, honestly. It's just not one of those romance books, if you know what I mean. Honestly, I was having trouble thinking of what to say about this one. I don't have a lot to say. This was another one in the series where I feel like not that much actually happened plot-wise. And I also want to note that this one is marketed as a brand new spring romance, and I personally didn't feel it was that spring-like at all. The only part I felt spring-like was a chapter where they go to the town's strawberry festival, and that was pretty much it. I didn't really feel the spring vibes. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, the only reason I feel like I've continued this series at this point is because I want to get to Annie and Max's story, which luckily is going to be the next book. So I think, especially having read this one now, I've already decided that even if she continues the series, for some reason, I'm gonna stop after the next book. And I'm gonna put this to rest. And I think the only other note I'm really gonna make about this book was I don't want to give any spoilers, but what happens at the end or near the end of this book, let's just say I was shaking my head at our two main characters very much, and in a the certain predicament that they end up in. Now, on what is hopefully going to be a bit more of a positive note, I was able to read the e-arc for The Love Haters by Catherine Center, which I ended up rating 4.25 stars, and I gave it 1.25 chili peppers. And just an FYI, this book actually comes out a week from today as we are listening to this episode. So the timing worked out pretty well. One thing I will say, I am really glad that I gave Catherine Center a chance, because I don't know why, and I was probably one of the few people, if I'm going to be honest, that did not enjoy the rom-comers. Yeah, I didn't really love the story arc and the characters in that one for some reason, and just the way that book was written. But this one felt, I don't know, I don't want to say very different, but it just had a different feel, and for some reason, I just enjoyed the arc and I guess the overall storyline a lot more. And surprisingly, since I didn't talk about this one in my coming soon episode, I guess I'll give you guys a bit of the summary in case you still haven't heard of this upcoming release. So basically, we center on this FMC Katie in this story who works as a video producer. But unfortunately, her company's going through layoffs and downsizing and whatnot thanks to her boss who is going through a lot of life stuff and in a very bad mood and is just laying people off. So her job is on the line. But in order to save her job, she has to take on her coworker's project, which involves going to film this promo video of the U.S. Coast Guard in the Key West. The only catch is that the one, I guess, Coast Guard rescuer person who is going to be featured in this is this guy who is virally known as, quote, Pup Daddy, but he's also her coworker's brother. And, of course, it's a rom-com type story. You can imagine what happens from there. And then I will note that I really liked the title of this book for some reason, and just this idea of someone being a love hater. And yeah, it definitely applies to both of our MCs in this book, where they've both gone through some relationship stuff and situations kind of recently, and it's made them, as the title says, quote, a love hater or hater of love, and they're just a little bitter, probably a little resentful and cynical and all of that. Anyways, I just thought this title was creative, but besides that, I just really liked, actually, first of all, the characters in this story much better. I thought they were a lot more likable, a little bit more believable. It was interesting getting to read about a FMC who struggles with body dysmorphia. I guess FYI, that is a warning for some of you to know going into this book. Yeah, that's something that's heavily talked about throughout the course of this book, and for her learning to love herself in addition to the romance plot that was in this book. Yeah, I thought that was like a nice, I guess, side plot, subplot, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, everything about this book was just a lot more likable. The way even the funny moments and like situations were written actually did have me laughing out loud in this one. There were also some really great other heartfelt quotes. I definitely highlighted a couple things while I was reading this, which of course I will maybe try to share somewhere online once this book is actually published and out in the world. And one final note I want to make is that you should not skip the author notes for Catherine Center books. The way she writes in those, how heartfelt and emotional she can be, speaks volumes, which is crazy because the author's notes isn't even part of the actual story. But there's something about the way she speaks directly to the reader that just makes you feel seen, and I feel like that probably speaks a lot to hopefully who she actually is as a person. So I personally really appreciate those and think you should not sleep on them. But yes, otherwise, if I was gonna say, if you're looking for a Catherine Center book to try, I know this one's gonna be her newest, but I actually think this one would be a pretty decent one to start with. And yeah, to give her a try, especially if you want a still fun summer romance with, again, some of those different topics, as well as a closed-door romance. And in a bit of a surprise twist, the last book that we're going to talk about in today's wrap-up is none other than Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings, which I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars, and I rated it 2.5 chili peppers. Now, the reason why I say this one was a bit of a surprise read was, as you guys just listened to probably a couple minutes ago, I gave my review on Daisy Haites, which I read earlier this month, and I honestly didn't plan on picking up the next Magnolia book this soon. I feel like I was trying to space out these books before because honestly, I I guess for those of you who have already read the books will know what I mean when I say these books are quite toxic and heavily traumatic, but also immersive, and it pulls you in so much that you just want to keep reading and find out what happens to these characters. And I think especially, I will say, with the first Magnolia and Daisy book, you're kind of immediately thrown into their world and this circle of friends, and their reality, and you don't know everything about their past and their history still. So I think that's the reason why I really wanted to pick up, for me, the next Daisy book. But of course, to get to the next Daisy book, I had to read the next Magnolia book first. So I kind of wanted to get this one out of the way. But I will say, this one was a bit of a step up from the first Magnolia book, which you guys couldn't tell from when I talked about it before. I did not like it that much. And I wasn't sure how much I was going to like The Long Way Home. I still didn't rate this one that highly, but I think I appreciated everything we learned, especially about Magnolia and BJ in this book. I also thought BJ's character arc was pretty good in this book, even though it does happen more in the later half of the book. We do get to see him start to grow and change, and I guess it shows the extent of how much he really cares for and loves Magnolia, which I just appreciated overall. I think I can also understand Magnolia's point of view and why she is the way she is a bit more from this book, from everything that we learn, because we do get a lot of their past and history and trauma that they've been through, a lot of it of which they also experienced together in their teen years, and when they were a couple before in the past. So yeah, I think I always appreciate, how do I put it? I guess when second books are done well, in the sense that you do get more of the backstory, and it gives you more understanding and context for the characters, because I guess in a series like this, although I can't think of that many series that are like this that I've necessarily read, but series like this where I guess they're what people call character studies, you really have to be in it for the long haul. And so I feel like the first couple books in the series might not be as good for actually understanding the characters and getting into more depth in that sense. But I feel like this is where the middle books of series like this can be really good for, again, getting context, history, and getting to just draw out more of each of these main characters, and again, why they are the way they are, and you appreciate them a bit more, even if they are still a little annoying, which I can definitely say, that was the case for me in reading this book. I'm not going to say much more than this, because I am going to keep continuing spoiler reviews for this series, because there's so much that you could unpack in these books. There's also lots more quotes I highlighted. But yeah, needless to say, I am curious to see how the Magnolia side of this universe is going to wrap up, because I'll just say she dropped a bit of a bomb at the end of this book, and I didn't know how to take it, which I have a little story on that as well, but again, that will be saved for another time. Hey readers, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and hear me out before you hit skip. I'm so grateful for all my listeners who are with me on this reading journey, and I'd like to ask that if you haven't yet, please leave a rating and review, as it helps others find the podcast. Also, please consider supporting the podcast financially, as it helps me bring you more exciting content, and you'll get some extras like bonus and subscriber-only episodes, early access to new episodes, and much more. The link to donate will be in the show notes below, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/fullybookedpod. Thank you so much again for choosing to listen to Fully Booked, and now back to the episode. Okay, everyone, so hopefully this segment is going to be a bit shorter than usual for today's wrap-up, as again, I only had one DNF for this past month of reading, which ended up being Summer in the City by Alex Astor, and I got 20% of the way into this book before I DNF'd it. And I guess I'm just going to make a note, too, that I exclusively listened to this one on audio, so maybe that influenced my rating a little bit, but honestly, I'm not sure. I guess as a starting note, this is the author of the Lightlark series, for those of you who have heard more about or have started or read this series. I personally haven't read that series myself, but I did hear a bit about it, and it's probably the reason why I saw a lot of booktubers picking up this book. I'm going to try to keep this review short and just say that there wasn't enough to hook me into reading this story. Honestly, to me, I found the FMC to be a bit judgmental, making too many assumptions about our MMC right off the bat before she even really knew him. And then on the other hand, the MMC was just not unique and interesting to read about, and just his overall personality and the way he talked. So yeah, overall, there was just nothing that made me want to keep reading this story. And honestly, I should have known right off the bat that I was not going to enjoy this one, because it starts off with a one night stand / hookup trope. Like that's how our MCs meet. And honestly, that's just something I don't prefer to read about in my romance books. I feel like unless you throw in the element of surprise pregnancy or something like that, it's pretty hard, or it takes more time and effort to create a stronger emotional bond between the two MCs. And obviously you're just starting out on this very physical level with the characters. And again, that's just not something I enjoy reading about as much in a romance storyline. But if you are looking for a fast-paced summer romance that, as the title says, takes place in the city, then maybe you will like this one. All right, we are finally on to the final section of today's reading wrap-up, which is the best versus worst pick for the month of April. And I'll just quickly preface by saying one pick is probably going to be a surprise, and the other is not. So with that in mind, I'm going to start off by saying the best pick for the month of April is going to be Where the Crawdads Sing by D.L.A. Owens. And you're probably confused because I did not talk about this book at all in this episode. That's because I'm saving that review for a future episode that I'm doing, so make sure to stick around for that. But yeah, I'll quickly just say about this book, it was an interesting mix of historical fiction and mystery. And I think one thing I can say about it is that it had sort of Kristen Hanna, The Great Alone vibes if The Great Alone were set in the marshlands of North Carolina instead of Alaska. So that's all I will say about that book for now, since I'm going to do a full review later. Now, the worst book was honestly a tie, because as you guys just heard me talk about, The Let Them Theory and The Strawberry Patch Pancake House were both rated below 3 stars, which in my books is a pretty bad rating. But if I really have to pick between the two, for me, I'm going to say The Strawberry Patch Pancake House was the worst read of April, unfortunately. And I think like I said, I probably said enough about it already in my review, so I'm honestly not going to say anything else. Other people who have read this series, you know. And honestly, again, there's only one reason that I'm sticking around for this series, and again, probably after the next book, let's just say my journey with Dream Harbor is probably going to come to an end. And with that now concludes my April reading wrap up. I guess my final note is just that looking back, I went on quite a reading journey this past month. The journey was rough at some points, but there was also so much to enjoy about the books that I was picking up this past month, which I guess is a good outcome at the end of the day. And with that being said, I'd love to hear how you guys were doing this past month in terms of your reading, what books you picked up and ended up enjoying. Actually, if you ended up picking up any of the books that were mentioned in today's episode, or just how your reading journey has been going overall so far in 2025. I would love to hear. You're always welcome to, again, message via any of my socials, which are all linked below. Or if you're somehow listening to this on YouTube right now, feel free to drop a comment, and I always try to check those the best that I can as well. And I guess with that, speaking of YouTube, if you are watching or have been watching and you're not subscribed yet to the channel, you should make sure to go do that so you can get notified of all of my video uploads. Which actually, FYI, I do upload audio-only episodes as well. But as you guys saw from the past couple weeks before this week, I've been experimenting with and uploading a lot more video episodes, and that is not going to change for now. At least for the foreseeable future. The video episodes are going to still keep coming as I just continue to come up with more new ideas and experiment. So yes, if you want to see all of the content, you should, again, definitely make sure to go and subscribe. But I guess with all of that being said, as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you back here for episode 36. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.